This is Ace from space.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ace Frehley.
They should have been here with us 50 or 55 years later and enjoying the fruits of their labor.
Kiss guitarist Ace Frehley has died. He was 74 years old.
We are completely devastated and heartbroken. Kiss founder Ace Frehley has now passed away at age 74.
On October 16, 2025, the rock world lost a star that refused to fade. Ace Frehley, the man with the silver face and the soul that burned beneath the metallic paint of Kiss. He passed away at 74, leaving behind a legacy that spans generations and musical boundaries. The news sent shockwaves through the music community and devastated millions of fans who grew up watching the spaceman defy gravity with every guitar solo. As news of Ace Frehley's passing spread throughout the rock world, all eyes turned to Gene Simmons.
I'm sad in retrospect, hindsight's 20/20. I'm sad that I wasn't more hard on Ace and Peter. Once the bell rings and people go off work, they all run to drink. And I always found that so peculiar.
For decades, their relationship had been defined by creative brilliance mixed with bitter conflict. Two immovable forces within Kiss who had drifted miles apart over the years. When Gene arrived at the funeral service in New Jersey, no one knew what to expect. What happened next left everyone in attendance stunned into silence. Gene Simmons, the business-minded demon of Kiss, who had often clashed with Ace's carefree spirit, approached the podium with uncharacteristic hesitation. The man known for his confidence and showmanship suddenly appeared vulnerable, human, as he stood before Ace's casket, adorned with silver stars and a worn Les Paul. The tension in the room was palpable. Those close to the situation report that Gene's hands trembled slightly as he unfolded a handwritten speech, something unusual for a man who had performed in front of millions without a hint of nervousness. What followed was perhaps the most raw and heartfelt moment in Kiss's complicated history. While we won't reveal the exact words that brought Paul Stanley to tears or caused Peter Criss to embrace Gene after years of distance, witnesses describe it as the most honest Gene Simmons has ever been in public. One attendee mentioned that Gene revealed a side of their relationship that had never been shared with fans, recounting a private moment between them that changed the course of both their lives. The unexpected emotional depth of Gene's tribute didn't just heal old wounds among the surviving Kiss members, it completely reframed how fans understand the complex brotherhood that existed between these four larger-than-life personalities. Gene's final gesture as he concluded his speech left the entire room gasping, a powerful symbolic act that no one saw coming. What makes Ace's loss particularly heartbreaking is how it happened. Ace wasn't claimed by the rock and roll lifestyle that had nearly taken him numerous times before. Instead, he slipped and fell in his New Jersey recording studio, the place where he was still doing the only thing he ever truly knew, making music. It was a mundane accident that silenced one of rock's most distinctive voices. To the world, Ace Frehley was the spaceman, the man who launched Kiss into orbit, with performances that made his guitar seem to glow in the dark. But behind that silver mask was a man who once lost himself to alcohol, loneliness, and the echo of his own legend. He left Kiss, then returned, spent years in the shadows, yet never lost the spark of creation. Now, as his Gibson Les Paul falls silent forever, we realize that sound was never just the background to a legend. It was the heartbeat of an entire generation. His longtime bandmate and friend Peter Criss confirmed the tragic news in a heartfelt social media post. With a broken heart and deep sadness, my brother Ace Frehley has passed away. He died peacefully with his family around him. My wife and I were with him to the end as well. I love you. These simple words from the Catman revealed the depth of brotherhood that existed between these two founding members of Kiss. Just weeks before his death, Ace Frehley was still in a burst of creative energy. He spent most of his time in his Morristown, New Jersey studio, recording new tracks for his next solo project, an album he described as a return to the energy of my youth. Those close to him recalled that during those days, Frehley was full of life. He drove himself to the studio every morning, played guitar for hours, and still wore the same old silver jacket he'd kept since the Love Gun era. But on the afternoon of September 18th, tragedy struck. While stepping out of the control room to grab another guitar, Frehley slipped on the freshly polished wooden floor, falling hard and striking his head on the edge of the mixing desk. At first, everyone thought it was just a minor fall. He was still conscious and even joked, "Not even the universe can knock me down." But a few hours later, Frehley began to lose his balance. His speech slowed, and he was rushed to Morristown Memorial Hospital. Doctors diagnosed him with a traumatic brain injury accompanied by internal bleeding and performed emergency surgery that night. After the operation, Frehley slipped into a coma and was placed in intensive care. In the days that followed, his condition failed to improve. His family, including his longtime girlfriend and daughter Monique, stayed by his bedside while fans around the world lit candles and prayed under the hashtag #PrayForAce. By early October, word leaked that he had become dependent on life support. Doctors told the family that the brain was no longer responding significantly. They were advised to prepare for the worst. And on the morning of October 16, 2025, in a quiet hospital room filled with old photos, silent guitars and New York groove playing softly on the speakers, Ace Frehley took his final breath. But to understand why his death left the rock world in stunned silence, we have to go back to the gray streets of the Bronx, where a poor boy first discovered that the sound of a guitar could save a lost soul. No one could have guessed that the kid once expelled for fighting would one day make millions look up as if he truly came from another planet. Ace Frehley, born Paul Daniel Frehley on April 27, 1951, in the Bronx, New York City, came into the world in a place known more for its rough neighborhoods and gang rivalries than for fairy tales. His family was of Dutch and German descent, devoutly Christian. His father worked as an electrical engineer while his mother was a homemaker devoted to the family. Music ran through the household, but for Ace, music wasn't something to be played in a quiet living room. It had to roar on the streets in the chaos amid the flames and noise. From a young age, Ace was different. He wasn't a good student, wasn't obedient, and had no interest in following the rules. By middle school, he had already begun skipping school and causing trouble. In his teens, he joined the Ducky Boys, a gang rooted in the Bronx Irish-American community. In one street fight, someone smashed a beer bottle over his head, a blow that left him needing stitches and staring silently into a mirror for hours afterward. That moment seemed to awaken something in him, a realization that if he kept going down that path, his destination wouldn't be a stage but a prison cell. Just when everything was unraveling, music entered his life like a miracle. At age 13, for Christmas, his parents gave him his first electric guitar. No teacher, no book, just his ears, his heart, and a hunger for something loud and new. He plugged the guitar into an amp and started figuring things out by feel, learning riffs from Hendrix, Cream, and Led Zeppelin. While his friends fell into drugs or got arrested, Ace locked himself in with his guitar. When his parents panicked over his blank report cards and calls from school, he would simply say, "I'm going to do something with music." No one believed him, but he believed. Ace would later say, "I wasn't born to be taught. I was born to hear the guitar and make it explode." His early life was chaotic, poor, violent, and lonely, but it forged a symbol. The Bronx could swallow an entire generation whole. But Ace Frehley somehow made it out, not by dreaming, but by plugging in. In 1972, fate took a turn when a strange ad appeared in the Village Voice, rock band seeking a lead guitarist. Influences: Led Zeppelin, Alice Cooper, Slade. It was placed by Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, who were building a new band with drummer Peter Criss. Ace showed up late to the audition, wearing mismatched socks and Adidas sneakers like he'd just landed from another planet. But when he plugged in and played, the room practically tore open. Stanley later recalled, "We'd never heard anyone play like that. It was the scream of metal, electricity, and a swagger we didn't yet have." Ace was hired on the spot, and soon after, the name Kiss was born. From an anonymous guitarist, Ace Frehley became a core element of a band that would soon redefine American rock. He was the one who designed Kiss's iconic logo with the lightning bolt SS, the spaceman persona, the cold-eyed alien with dreamy eyes, long hair, and a smoke-spewing guitar was entirely his own creation. On stage, Ace seemed possessed. He barely moved, rarely spoke, and never made eye contact with the crowd. But when it came time to solo, everything exploded. In songs like Cold Gin, Parasite, Shock Me, and Rocket Ride, Ace's guitar wasn't just an instrument, it was the untamed soul of Kiss. By the mid-1970s, Kiss was no longer just a band. They were a phenomenon, a stage empire, a storm of imagery, an escape for a generation of American youth disillusioned with reality. From the Alive album in 1975 to Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, and Love Gun, Ace's guitar was the sonic spearhead that shaped Kiss's entire identity. The track Shock Me from Love Gun marked a pivotal moment. It was Ace Frehley's debut as lead vocalist and his declaration of existence within the group. The song was inspired by a real incident in which Ace was severely electrocuted during a concert, but returned to the stage just minutes later. That was who he was. No theatrics, no drama, just quietly walking back out and playing. In 1978, when all four Kiss members released solo albums, it was Ace Frehley's record that stood out both in sales and critical reception. His cover of New York Groove became a surprise hit, placing Ace on equal footing with more favored frontmen like Stanley and Simmons. It was the first moment where Ace Frehley stepped out of Kiss's shadow and proved he could shine on his own. From 1976 to 1979, Kiss became a full-blown pop culture empire. Their fame extended beyond records into toys, pinball machines, Marvel Comics, school lunchboxes, and Halloween masks. That mania, a point of pride for Gene Simmons and a tool for expansion for Paul Stanley, made Ace Frehley feel lost. He had never entered music to become merchandise. While the band negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts and appeared on countless talk shows, Ace just wanted to play. He felt like he was being turned into a cartoon character when the only thing he truly knew how to do was make a guitar shriek, buzz, and howl. Backstage, he often sat alone with a bottle, sunglasses on, avoiding the cameras. Things slid further during the making of Dynasty in 1979, a deliberate pivot toward disco rock. Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons saw it as a strategic move, but to Ace, it was a betrayal of the band's raw roots, the wild spirit that had once made Kiss dangerous. The unraveling of Ace Frehley and Kiss came like a slow bleed. By the late 1970s, as Kiss shifted toward commercial reinvention, Ace was like a lost guest at a party he no longer wanted to attend. Drunkenness became a constant. Every meeting spiraled into arguments. Every tour was a battle, Ace versus himself, Ace versus management, Ace versus the band. His relationship with Paul Stanley grew particularly tense. Paul was a perfectionist, committed to schedules, rehearsals, and professional presentation, all things Ace found mind-numbing. With Gene Simmons, the conflict ran even deeper. Simmons saw Kiss as a corporation, but Ace never wanted to be a CEO or a trademark. He just wanted to be a free guitarist. By 1982, Ace Frehley officially left Kiss. In the years that followed, he lost his direction. He launched Frehley's Comet and released several albums, but the looming shadow of his past made every effort feel like a comparison and often a disappointment. Looking back, Ace Frehley's downfall wasn't caused by any one enemy. It was the collision between genius and machinery, a man unwilling to bend, placed inside a system that demanded compromise, and when he couldn't or wouldn't adapt, that machine quietly crushed him under the very gears he had once helped set in motion. Throughout the 1990s, Ace nearly vanished from the music scene. He lived in seclusion, drowned in debt, battling addiction, and the emptiness left in Kiss's wake. Then in 1996, an unexpected light broke through. Kiss reunited the original lineup for the massive Alive worldwide tour. The tour was wildly successful, but it couldn't mend the fractures that had taken root deep within. In 2002, he left the band again, this time for good. Only after that final departure did Ace Frehley fully step into his true solo chapter. Anomaly in 2009 marked a surprising comeback, earning praise both commercially and critically. He followed up with Space Invader, Origins Volume 1, Spaceman, and Origins Volume 2. In 2024, he released 10,000 Volts, hailed by critics as a final electric surge from Planet Ace. Behind the smoke-spewing guitar, Ace Frehley's personal life was a hazy gray zone. He married Jeanette Taratola, and together they had a daughter, Monique. But like the man himself, the marriage lacked stability and quickly fractured. In the rare moments he mentioned his family, Ace would usually deflect as if it were a chapter he didn't have the courage to reread. His finances followed a similar pattern of decline. In 2013, Ace lost his home in Yorktown Heights, New York due to a defaulted mortgage loan. By 2024, he openly admitted he couldn't renew his passport because he owed the IRS more than $200. A man who once stood before tens of thousands of fans could now no longer leave the country. In 2025, just before fate closed the final chapter of his life, Ace Frehley lived as though time itself had no claim over him. At 74, the spaceman still carried his silver Les Paul across small stages and studios throughout America. In the early months of the year, Frehley performed at the Mohegan Sun Arena and the Jam at the Dam Festival in Connecticut. In early September, he suffered a minor accident in the studio that forced him to cancel several shows. On October 6, 2025, he posted a message on Instagram that made fans' hearts sink. "I have to cancel the rest of my tour, but don't worry, I'm still here in the studio where the music never stops." No one knew it would be his last message. Ace Frehley's legacy isn't measured in platinum records or sterile statistics. It lives in every kid who struggles to play the Shock Me solo. It lives in every self-taught musician who dares to believe in their own chaotic noise. And it lives in every riff that bursts out like an engine on the verge of exploding, the kind of sound that only Ace could make. Because of that, he inspired an entire generation of guitarists. Dimebag Darrell of Pantera once said, "Ace was the reason I wanted to be on stage." Slash of Guns N' Roses admitted he picked up the guitar because of Ace, and that Alive was the album that changed his childhood. Dave Grohl, Scott Ian, Tom Morello, Mike McCready. The list of musicians who cite Frehley as their idol stretches across genres. In 2014, Ace was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame alongside the founding members of Kiss. But even at that celebration, he remained true to form. No assimilation, no apologies, no pretenses. He didn't seek approval from the establishment because he knew his impact couldn't be measured by charts or awards. On October 16, 2025, the Silver Star finally drifted out of its orbit. The fatal fall in the studio closed more than half a century of wandering between music and solitude, but also opened another immortal chapter where Ace Frehley ceased to be a man and became pure sound. As Peter Criss said in his final tribute, as a founding member of the rock group Kiss, and in Ace's solo career, Ace influenced and touched the hearts of millions of people. His legacy will live on in the music industry and in the hearts of the Kiss Army. Ace Frehley never tried to become a legend, but by refusing every mold, he accidentally became one. When Frehley slowly stepped away from the big stages, he didn't carry fireworks or dazzling lights. He carried a legacy forged from raw electric guitar, unyielding spirit, and the heart of an artist who never surrendered. What exactly did Gene Simmons say at the funeral that caused such an emotional reaction? How did this final tribute reshape our understanding of rock's most complicated friendship? And what was the mysterious gesture that stunned everyone present? The answers reveal a side of Gene Simmons that the public has rarely witnessed. A glimpse behind the demon makeup to the man who, despite everything, never stopped considering Ace Frehley his brother in rock and roll. A man who lived as if every show were his last, played as if no one were watching, and left this world like a falling star, leaving behind a trail of light that will never fade. What do you think about Ace Frehley's turbulent yet unbreakable journey? Which of his solos still echoes in your mind? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe as we continue exploring the legends of rock and roll.